For many around the United States, fall is synonymous with Halloween or fair and carnival time. When the fair rolls into town, it often includes a spooky haunted attraction of some type, and this is the perfect time of the year to attend. While certainly not directly linked to Halloween, many people associate the fair, park, or carnival haunted attraction, especially the dark rides, with the Halloween season. As technology and society have marched forward, many of the spooky carnival attractions and rides have been facing steeper and steeper competition from bigger, technologically superior attractions and theme park rides. In a time where theme parks can spend millions of dollars on structures and illusions that astound audiences, many of the older carnival attractions have had a difficult time keeping up with modern expectations. While many of these attractions still exist in one form or another, many more have closed or significantly changed their tricks and looks to suit a more modern audience. While this video will give a short history of these attractions, it will primarily be concerned with the look and art associated with them, and is not an in-depth exploration of the history of these dark attractions. A brief history of the haunted attraction. While the history of the haunted attraction can arguably be traced back many hundreds, if not thousands of years, the rise of the modern haunted attraction really begins in the late 1700s with the Phantasmagoria. The late 18th century saw an obsession with the bizarre and the supernatural, leading to the rise of the Gothic novel. This also led to a new form of special effects-driven horror and shock-based theater performances. The Phantasmagoria was a form of horror theater that used special effects techniques, such as the rear projection or the magic lantern, to project frightening images such as skeletons, demons, and ghosts onto walls, smoke, or semi-transparent screens. The shows started under the guise of actual spiritual seances in Germany in the late 18th century, and gained popularity through most of Europe throughout the 19th century. The Phantasmagoria led to the establishment of structures dedicated to haunted or spooky experiences. Almost immediately, the haunted attraction experience began to diverge between the more expensive and stationary ride-through style experience versus the easier to move and usually cheaper funhouse style. The early funhouse style structures usually provided scary effects-driven scenes or startles and relied on audience's own feet for conveyance. One of the first recorded funhouse-style spooky attractions was the Orton and Spooner Haunted Cottage, which opened in 1915 in Liphook, England. The interior tricks were purportedly powered by steam, and it still exists at the Hollycombe Steam Collection to this day. Dawn of the Dark Ride. To provide audience movement from scene to scene or trick to trick, the haunted house attraction was quickly paired with the earliest dark rides. The first carnival dark rides were referred to as Old Mill rides, and they started appearing in the late 1800s. In Old Mill rides, passengers would sit in a boat traveling along narrow water channels that would pass by various scenes or figures. Sometimes these rides were scary, while others might be a trip through history or around the world, or even just through relaxing scenery. A very early version of the ride-through Old Mill horror experience was located in the Dreamland Park at New York's Coney Island. Called Hell Gate, it opened in 1905. This ride gave audiences a chance to experience the horrors of hell itself. After paying 10 cents to ticket sellers dressed in red robes and horned hats, riders boarded boats in a building topped by a giant winged effigy of Satan. In 1907, the New York Tribune reported the sights and scenes found within the ride. It said that riders saw Satan rubbing his hands in glee. They watched as demons dragged sinners into a pit, triggering gray steam and fluttering tongues of red paper fire. Then, after a speech on good behavior, an angel appeared, sending Satan diving like a fish into the pit after the sinners. Old Mill rides were expensive to construct and difficult to maintain. They required a canal system and a way to continually push the water through it. The wooden waterways would often leak and need patching. Due to these issues, very few parks could afford to run old mills. In the late 1920s, the two owners of the Tumbling Dam amusement park, Leon Cassidy and Marvin Rempfer, wanted to add some type of dark ride attraction that wouldn't involve the cost of the wooden canal system. They decided on something that used electricity. They took a bumper car and modified the bottom of it to fit a single rail track. This led to the very first modern dark ride, which they opened in 1928. The pair ended up going into business making dark rides. They called their company the Pretzel Amusement Ride Company due to all the tight twists and turns the ride would take along its track. Many of the ride cars sported the pretzel design to identify them. These railed dark rides naturally paired with a haunted attraction, and a new form of carnival ride was born. The Spooky Dark Ride Carnival Attraction. Other than price, the pretzel rides had another boon. Freed from more elaborate and expensive canal systems, the rides could be created to easily be deconstructed and moved around, making them ideal for traveling fairs or carnivals. Scary or horror-themed pretzel rides were often referred to as ghost trains early on, a term that would continue to be used frequently in Britain. By the 1930s, many attractions were sporting elaborate exterior decorations to attract riders from the Midway. The art would usually be constructed of painted wood and depict scenes of terrible creatures and skeletal undead, promising an experience of sheer terror within. Some exteriors would include large figures with animation or smoke effects. The rides and the artwork would vary greatly by the company and artists creating them. Some of these rides were designed by horror attraction legends, such as Bill Tracy and Vincent Valentine, and included fantastic, grandiose, and stylistic exteriors, while others were created or modified by talented local artists or owners, and sported far more modest exterior and interior scenes. Mileage could vary widely from attraction to attraction. Gothic castles, giant beasts, creeping skeletons, snarling demons, laughing devils, cackling witches, prowling vampires, and even muscle-bound warriors were commonly displayed on the exteriors of these dark rides. More often than not, the sights found on the outside of the ride was far more impressive than those on the inside. The art displays on the outside of these rides deserve recognition on their own merits. Examples of haunted attraction exterior art. One of the best examples of a spooky pretzel dark ride with great exterior art displays is the Spookorama, located at Dino's Wonder Wheel Amusement Park on Coney Island. Constructed in 1955, the Spookorama exterior was enhanced over the years by the owners and local artists. At one time, it sported a large animated Cyclops that was often seen brandishing another monster's head. The Cyclops has become famous as a great example of carnival haunted attraction art displays of yesteryear. The Spookorama is still in operation in its original location, but the ride and exterior has been modified throughout the years. An extensive modification occurred in 2013. In the 1950s, the Rocky Point Amusement Park of Rhode Island opened the House of Horrors. The House of Horrors exterior displayed a medieval castle appearance. Above the entrance, a dragon brandished a severed head, while beside it, or behind it, a Viking stood with a spear and shield at the ready. By 1963, the House of Horrors was converted by Bill Tracy to a horror-themed jungle ride, and the park was totally shut down in 1995. Across the country in 1963, the Miracle Strip Amusement Park opened in Panama City Beach, Florida. The park contained several great rides with exteriors by Val Valentine. Among them was Dantes Inferno, where you entered through the mouth of a giant fanged head of Satan to find a tilt-a-whirl ride with lights and music located inside a large interior dome. While not an official haunt attraction, the exterior deserves admiration. The Miracle Strip did have several true haunted attractions. Most people's favorite was built by the famous Bill Tracy in 1965. It was called the Haunted Castle, and it was originally designed to look like a Gothic castle with a large dragon decorating the exterior. This is a surprisingly common theme for this type of attraction for many decades. But the dragon did not stick around, and the exterior was modified by Val Valentine and given a much more cartoonish haunted house look, complete with a giant monster tree. The Miracle Strip closed in 2004 and the structure was torn down, but the interior of the ride was purchased and moved to the Territorium in Oxford, Alabama. Another famous example of Bill Tracy's work could be found at Bell's Amusement Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Known as the Phantasmagoria, it opened in 1973 and had a Wacky Shack-style exterior. The ride was dismantled after Bell's closed in 2006. There has been some rumors of a return in a different location, so we'll just have to wait and see what the spirits have in store. Dantes Inferno was installed in 1971 at Astroland on Coney Island. It featured a giant demon wielding a pitchfork, an animated three-headed dragon or Cerberus, and artwork of a fiery hellscape complete with severed Gorgon's head. By the early 1970s, these attractions were starting to support graffiti or heavy metal style artwork, often supplied or supplemented by local artists. The demon of Dantes Inferno was banished with the closing of Astroland in 2008. But the evil would live on. The ride had a sibling at Wildwood in New Jersey, and though slightly different, this Dantes Inferno featured similar sights, including the demon and a multi-headed dragon. The Wildwood Dantes Inferno was refurbished to Dante's Dungeon in 2005, and the hellscape was replaced with a more subdued haunted castle theme. The 1970s became a new high point for the haunted attraction Low Art. Traveling state fair haunts would become relatively common, and the airbrushed rock album cover look would persist well into the 1990s and still exists on some examples today. During this time, many of the attractions also started to display bound maidens and muscled warriors pitted against deadly fantastic beasts and dragons. The art favored the Conan the Barbarian and Dungeons & Dragons trends of the early 1980s. A great example of this is the Flying Witch at Rye Playland in New York. The facade was airbrushed by an artist known as the Wizard in the 1990s, and is one of the best examples of the old-school fantasy graffiti-style artwork associated with the rides of this time. It began its life as the Witch's Mill in 1971, but was eventually converted to the Flying Witch due to the installation of a witch statue on the exterior. The giant ape face with rotating teeth was converted to a giant demon, and statues of famous film villains such as Dracula and Freddy Krueger were added to the balcony, along with a skeletal monk. The ape demon's head, as well as a large dragon's head, meld into the heavy metal background artwork, and goblins and sorcerers menace potential audience members. A truly chaotic tableau that can take a while to take in all of the wonderful details. Ancient warriors ride the dragons to battle and fight against the beasts of hell and their sorceress allies. One might be led to wonder if they are boarding a ride or looking at the box art from an early Castlevania or Diablo video game. Even the car you rode was fashioned to look like a scowling monster. The Flying Witch closed in 2022, but it's rumored that it has been purchased and it will find a new home soon. You are all but guaranteed to be magically transported to an alternative world of monster, terror, and great adventure when you ride this ride. And to tap a similar vein, this ride is called the Tomb of Doom. As of 2022, it is a relatively common traveling fair haunted attraction with some great exterior art. We are again treated to images of dragons, goblins, skeletal undead, and evil wizards on a tableau that seems directly removed from a 1980s D&D box or video game artwork. The underground horrors and ancient evil temple is accentuated with statues of a skeletal monk and a veiled witch with a sword. The ride's exterior promised not only horror but also great adventure. And this is yet another great example of haunted attraction exterior art. This is a hodgepodge of fantasy elements, classic horror film elements, and gothic nightmares. Multi-headed dragons snap, giant apes reach, large bats flap, and the undead reach out of windows toward the crowd. Judging by the exterior, you'll be lucky to survive this one because anything could be coming to get you. After getting off Skull Island, King Kong apparently fell in with a pretty rough crowd and made some medieval enemies. Laying siege to this castle will be no easy feat. It appears that this could be the work for a lone hero wielding a magic sword or maybe a magic whip. This attraction has really made the rounds and can be found at several places around the world through time. Sometimes the exterior was not as busy as at other venues. Some of the attractions were far more theater than ride, but still boasted incredible exteriors. This is the case with Skull Kingdom, a horror attraction that was located in Orlando, Florida from 1993 to 2006. It appears to be the lair of the leader of the Army of Darkness, and it could be the final level or stage of a game. The attraction itself was reportedly ridden with technical and staffing issues, and many felt that it was nowhere near as good as the outside of the structure promised, but that makes it perfect for mentioning in this video. Most of the time, this was the case. I would eventually like to do a video that discusses how the vintage attractions influenced and in turn were influenced by the popular fantasy trends, such as films, games, and toys of the 1970s and 1980s. The stylistic fingerprints of each are all over the other. It was not unusual for the exterior to display elements that were directly copied from obscure film, comic, or video game art, such as the witch in the upper right corner of this attraction, that was taken from the box art from the 1993 video game Lands of Lore. And not all of the attractions are horrifying. Ghost Party has a more kid-oriented theme, and a slightly modified version of Casper adorns the exterior. While it seems the ghouls are having a good time, I'm not so sure about the kids. Many of the rides and attractions have had their exterior art updated throughout the years and now sport a more modern aesthetic. This usually translates to more zombies and evil clowns, but they still have that hodgepodge style and feel. Though the visual style and the subject matter varies widely, classic horror movie monsters are still loved and utilized on the outside of many of these haunted attractions. And some themes never go out of style. The eclectic mash of images and low art styles sometimes feels like a Halloween yard haunt with a ride attached. In fact, these days, some yard haunts are technically superior to these attractions, but they can't replace the nostalgic feel and setting. The outside of these attractions were created to bring people in from the midway and get them to participate. We are all striving for this in some small way when we decorate our yards and homes to celebrate a holiday about all things creepy and adventurous. One thing can be certain. The exterior art of these attractions caught the imagination of the many who saw them, and they inspired many modern Halloween decorations used by modern yard haunters and Halloween enthusiasts today. I hope you enjoyed this look at haunted attraction exterior art, and if you like these memories of the little things, please subscribe to stay in touch with future content. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you will continue along with us as we remember the little things that make life so interesting, adventurous, and spooky.